Hey, good afternoon, guys. Thanks for joining again. I wanted to do this video on the topic of property tests, and that is what you see here as an option within your structured expression dialog as one of the operations for querying your model. And what's interesting about this is you can actually use this to create derived properties based on some input properties that you may have specified with stereotypes. So what you see here is a table that is currently displaying a few different stereotype attributes that are typed as an enumeration. And because they are typed as an enumeration, they have certain options that you would somewhat consider a drop-down menu of options. So this is based on this profile that is a very dumbed down profile for example's sake. And if you notice, we have this stereotype that's named Options 2022. There are a few different attributes of this, such as the seat type and the seat color. And then they are typed by these enumerations with these enumeration literals as the options. But then notice we have this other enumeration that's called the base price kind. And what we'll do with this is actually output one of these three enumeration literals based on what we select for these input enumeration literals. So what I've done is created a customization, and the customization has two targets actually, the block and then the stereotype. So options 2022 and the block are both targets of this. And then there is a derived property specification, which is the same thing that you can create through a generic table if you were to go to your columns and select create new derived property. However, the other way to create derived properties is in a profile diagram with a customization. So what you do is you add the derived property specification by selecting derived property specification, and then you can type that, and the type of this will be the output. So what we'll do is we'll create an if-then-else statement using the property tests, and we will output a type of base price, and that will be one of these three options depending on the conditions that we specify with the if-then-else statement. Notice I've set the multiplicity to 1 as well, which is the same thing as selecting a single output in a structured expression dialog. So what I'll do is go into the specification for this, and then if you notice we have expression, and currently we're using an if-then-else statement. So when you first create this, you won't have anything selected here, and you can open this up and it'll come to the structured expression dialog. What I did is I went into create operation and used an operation from the model and selected an if-then-else statement. So what you notice is that is up here already, but then when you first start an if-then-else statement, it asks you for the initial condition, and then it gives you then and else. So I'll actually have the condition as the property test, which will essentially be answering the question of what are we talking about here, right? So the if then else statement needs to know what it needs to look at, and that's the condition. So what you can do is reset this and then go to property test. So it's saying if this certain condition, which is this certain property that we will select a specific value of, is set to some certain value, that's what the question is that we're answering with that property test, then we will output something else. So let's create a separate column here, and we will do a new derived property together. So let's go through this, and we'll create a new derived property. We'll call this seat price, and then let's also use base price kind as our type, even though we'd probably want to create a new enumeration for this seat price based on those inputs. So what I'll do is set the multiplicity here to 1, and then we'll go into that specification up to the expression section, and it opens up the structured expression dialog, which is where you would then go to create operation, do operation from model. We'll search for an if-then-else statement, and then as I mentioned, it says condition equals false currently, but you reset this And when you do that, you can then select property tests. So we'll go to the property tests, and since we're talking about the seat type, what I'll do is search for seat. We'll select this, and the condition will be essentially if this seat type is what we select through the drop-down menu, which is one of the enumeration literals that we have. So let's say if this seat type is leather, then I'm going to output one of these other enumeration literals. So in order to do that, these are actually elements in your model. So you want to output an element. So we can select element, and then you search for that specific element in your model, and you'll find your enumeration literals under any element. So what I will do now is search for 60,000, and then the else would be where you could put in, if you didn't select that, it would simply output some other value that you could select as an element. But in this case, what I'm going to do is embed another if then else statement, so it is essentially an else if situation at that point. So we go to else, and then we will select operation from model again, and use another embedded if then else statement, and then you start that pattern over again. So the first question is, if it is that first option, then output 60,000, else we will go to another if then else again, reset this, and do another property test. So let's look for seat type again. We'll search for that, seat type, and we will select racing in this case, and then we can go through and select another element, which will be one of our enumeration literals. And notice it does not show up when you have type and package selected, or if you have property selected, but if you select any element, you'll see your enumeration literals. Then output 70,000, and then in this case we can simply say else. We'll select 80,000, and you could continue doing embedded if then else statements if you'd like. And in a moment, I'd like to show you how you could also get a little bit fancier and add in the and or the or operations. So let's go through and select 80,000, and that should conclude our operation. So now what we can do is pull in that seat price derived property into this generic table. But before you do that, what's good to do when you're using customizations is to save that. And in the past, I've said to also close the project and then reopen that. But there's also a little quick tip here for you that may work, and that's if you go to View and simply refresh your model or use F5. What that should do is cause Cameo to then see that that derived property has been created, and you should have access to that now in your table. So if you go to columns and then select columns, we'll search for seat, and now you have seat price as an option, and that's your derived property. So then currently we are outputting these values, and of course this doesn't make a lot of sense based on the data that we have here. But that is essentially how you can go through and use property tests to create a derived property based on some of the inputs that you select for the enumeration literals of your enumerations that are the type for your stereotype attributes. As you notice, we have the ability to toggle those based on the enumeration literals that we have set there, and then we have our outputs that are then updating based on that. So that's how you can use a property test in an if then else statement. Let's go in and edit this quickly, and I'd like to delve into the aspect of using an and or an or statement as well. So let's say that we wanted to do else if, and then the condition would be an and. What we could do is reset this and then go to operation from model, and we can search for an and operation. So in this case, both of these conditions would have to be met in order to output that specific value. So these don't have to be of the same stereotype attribute. So what I'll do is do a property test of two different stereotype attributes. In this case, A will be the first one, and we'll use a property test and say that the seat type, so this is essentially if the seat type is leather, and we'll do seat color, so we'll reset this and go to property test, and then seat color is white. So we have a leather and white. If they're leather and white, then the output will be 70,000. So I hope this has been helpful. I think that property tests are underused in projects where you might be actually able to do some very quick and easy derived properties from those. So let me know if you have any questions on this. I'd like to say thank you to Kate Kowalowski for her model that was the idea for this. She had done one of these types of queries for a safety profile that she had developed based on MIL Standard 882. So maybe you'll see her coming out with a video on that soon. Thanks for watching.